I can remember what happened down there 55 years ago as if it were yesterday. But I've already forgotten the name of somebody I met just yesterday.
I'm sorry, I forget her name. What's her name?
To explore how we remember, we visit a man who can't.
I don't remember.
Okay.
Then we peer into the brain of a man with plump hippocampi. Well, he won't even care what it means.
Well, in this case, bigger is better.
We discover how ice can make memories stronger. Why I get fixated on hard-boiled eggs. Deviled eggs. They're the deviled eggs.
They sniff it.
And we see a sniff that cures Alzheimer's, if only in mice.
It's like a miracle.
I'm Alda. Join me as we journey inside our minds to discover the roots of memory. Why some memories slip away, and others you just don't forget.
This program was made possible by the National Science Foundation, America's investment in the future. And by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
When I was 12, I went swimming alone on the surf down there. It was rougher than it is today. I was a strong swimmer, and for a while it was fun letting the waves pull me out to sea and tumble me over and over again under the surface. But when I tried to get out, I couldn't. And I started to panic, and I realized I might drown. Eventually, I was able to claw my way up the beach, grabbing at handfuls of sand. That was 55 years ago, and I still remember it vividly. I remember the waves pummeling me, taking me under, wet sand under my fingers. The roar of the waves. I remember the sting of the salt spray. So where and what is memory? How is it tucked away in my brain, ready to come back in an instant? Tucked away along with, but separate from, hundreds of thousands of, maybe millions of other memories. Where's the smell of the salt spray, the grittiness of the sand, the crashing on the rocks? In the next hour, we're going to find out how we create our memories, not just vivid ones like this, but where I left my car keys, and the name of that familiar-looking person across the room there. And we'll be looking at how memories are lost, how as we grow older, they become slippery and elusive, sometimes vanishing forever, erasing our past and who we are. We're starting our exploration of memory a few miles up the coast from La Jolla, with a man whose own ability to create memories vanished almost entirely a decade ago. Ever since, he's been helping researchers from the University of California, San Diego.
Hey, good to see you, by golly.
Today, Larry Squire and Jen Frascino are on the latest of many visits the team has made to the man known to memory researchers everywhere as EP.
Oh, it's wonderful. Got a nice sun for the camera.
Yeah.
A little work?
We're going to go in, you're going to do some work with Jen.
Good.
EP is now 82.
This is fun. Enjoy it.
In 1992, retired from a career in electronics, he suffered an acute virus infection that destroyed part of his brain.
Research and development, that's what I like.
Most of his thinking skills survived the damage virtually intact.
Why should people pay taxes?
To support your country and your counties and states to pay for things.
If you were lost in the forest during the day, how would you go about finding your way out?
I would find a river and follow the river down to wherever it may go. Ocean, lake.
EP can also copy complex drawings.
About it, huh?
And he not only has no difficulty repeating back a list of words, in this case, dog, raccoon, lion, and parrot.
Dog, raccoon, lion, and a parrot.
Good.
But he even has a little sly fun with Jen along the way.
What you gotta add is about 2 more.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Would
I
that
think
make it tougher?
Then that would catch them. 7, you know. Leaf. Medicine.
EP really hits his stride when the testing of his cognitive skills involves Jen's laptop computer.
Gold. Having been in electronics over the years, I am amazed at all this. It's just wonderful. Believe me, little printed circuits, just, oh, you can't believe it. It used to be in a 6-foot rack, and down to this, it's just wonderful. When I was in electronics, this would be in a 6-foot rack.
But it's now that something odd about EP's behavior becomes apparent.
Printed circuits, diodes, triodes, and all that stuff in there. Oh, it's just amazing, believe me. When I was in electronics, this would be in a 6-foot rack. This would be in a 6-foot rack. It would be in a couple 6-foot racks. It would be in 6-foot racks. This would be in a 6-foot rack. And now look at it, down to this. Little printed circuits and...
So he's not aware that he's told us 3 or 4 times that he used to be in electronics, that a computer used to fill a room, and that now it's down to the size of a microchip. He's just not aware that he said those things several times.
No, he tells us the same stories again and again. We've heard these stories before, and we'll hear these stories again.
The equipment that it takes.
How was it? How have you been enjoying this?
I enjoy this.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It is interesting, isn't it?
Look at the work you guys are doing. You're getting wonderful, I believe.
I'm sorry, I forget her name. What's her name?
Her name?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Okay, Jennifer.
Jennifer.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Have you met Jennifer before today?
I think so, yes. I'm not positive, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, my...
No.
Oh, that's
It's
okay.
okay.
Yeah.
We all have.
Well, we all get that one.
Oh, sure. How much have you worked with him?
We have probably visited his house 200 times.
200 times. And for him, is each time the first time for him?
Well, you see, it's yes and no. It's clear that he does have a record of the experiences that are based on the habits, the interactions, the emotional values of the interactions, the fact that they've been positive and not negative. He certainly lets us in the door faster.
I mean, like you saw, he couldn't tell you my name.
Yeah.
He couldn't tell you if you saw me before. But there's definitely a rapport there that I think has been built, and he's aware on some level. I read you some words about 15 minutes ago. 4 of them. 4 words. Do you remember me reading you 4 words?
No, I can't
No?
recall. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Don't need to
My
apologize.
mind is getting old.
That's okay. I read you 4 animals, and I want you to tell me yes if you think the animal was on the list I read you about 15 minutes ago, or no if it was not on the list.
Wonderful.
Okay? Cat.
Yes.
How sure are you?
I feel reasonably sure
Reasonably
on that cat.
sure? Uh-huh. Raccoon.
No. I feel no.
Giraffe.
Yes.
How sure are you that I read you
I'm
that
real
word?
sure on that.
Real sure?
They're beautiful animals,
Okay.
believe me.
Lion.
No.
Okay.
EP's inability to remember things that happened just a few minutes ago can be traced directly to the damage the virus inflicted on his brain a decade ago. The areas destroyed were in his temporal lobes, most critically a structure called the hippocampus and the brain tissue immediately around it. Without a hippocampus, EP lives in a permanent present. Anything new that happens to him simply doesn't get recorded.
Do you remember drawing something for me today?
No.
Drawing something about
No.
15, 20 minutes ago?
No.
Remember picking? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Don't apologize.
Yeah.
Thank you for trying. Thank you.
But although EP can't record new memories, old ones from the years before his hippocampus was destroyed are remarkably intact.
Hayward.
He grew up in Hayward, California.
How about your house on Castro Valley Boulevard to the Hayward Theater? Remember where the Hayward Theater is?
Yes, I would leave the house and turn to the right to A Street, down A Street to Castro Boulevard, and turn to the left, and it's in the middle of the block. Hayward,
Okay, and if you didn't go down to A Street, if you instead you could take another street. What would
the
you do?
Center, Redwood Road.
Okay.
Redwood Road would run right into it.
Unbelievable, man.
How about the public library, Hayward Public Library, from your house?
Be the same thing going down A Street, and then A, you have to go to the left to B, and it's on the corner. I don't
He's got that map in his head. He can see all these streets.
He used to ride his bicycle around.
The last thing I want to talk to you about is the neighborhood that we're in now.
Here.
How about any of the streets around here? Can you tell me any of the street names in the neighborhood here?
No, I cannot.
That's hard. That's a tough one.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, you don't need to apologize.
I know where Castro Valley Boulevard, but that's where I was
Absolutely.
born and raised.
Absolutely.
But right here, I have to say no, I'm sorry. No, I just lived right here.
Okay. Enjoy the world
Try
rather
and
than
enjoy
driving.
our area right here.
Okay.
You seem to enjoy your life.
Oh, I have.
The enthusiastic help of amnesics like EP has pinpointed the hippocampus as crucial for recording new memories.
Those places, it was just wonderful.
At the same time, the fact that EP has vivid memories from years before his hippocampus was destroyed means the hippocampus can't be where they're permanently stored.
We love it here.
It's to probe more deeply into how memories are formed that we're meeting another amnesic. But this time, it's a man whose hippocampus, although badly damaged as a result of a heart attack 5 years ago, still struggles to put memories together.
So what I'd like to do is just show you some pictures and ask you, what can you tell me about these pictures? Do they evoke any memory? What does it bring back for you?
Chuck's memory is being studied by Dr. Mika Ferfeli.
Here, this is something that you might have seen, in any of the local newspapers in the last year.
But it certainly has something to do with people objecting to.
We're in Boston, where the recent sex abuse scandals in the Catholic Church have received intense media coverage.
People who are somehow hurting, abusing, not paying enough attention to others.
Good. Is that a picture that looks familiar to you?
I believe this is a picture taken the day or days after the towers in New York were all...
Chuck, do you remember where you were when that happened?
Not at all. I remember at the time being especially worried because my son was in New York, and obviously the first thing I...
As Chuck's wife remembers very well, this isn't so.
I don't remember.
Their son lives in New York today, but he didn't on 9/11. Chuck taught English before his illness, and he's continued to write since, giving us a unique glimpse into a mind that knows only too acutely what it has lost.
I cannot remember my wedding day or the celebration surrounding it. I do not recall the birth of my sons, my father's death, or who most other family members are. There are many.
When we first came in here this morning,
Yes.
we actually started off with looking at some pictures.
That's right.
Do you remember?
I knew you were going to tell me that they're going to be there.
Oh,
Can I remember them?
right.
Let me think, please. I'm just getting glimpses. Not even any shapes or actual depictions of anything that was there.
Chuck certainly has severe damage to the hippocampus, but his hippocampus isn't gone completely. So there's still something working to some extent. And what happens is that some experiences, some fragments of experiences may stick, but they're not linked in the correct way. They're not linked to other things that happened. They're not linked to the correct context. Sometimes they're not linked to the correct people. And so in that way, we're left with fragments that are not integrated. Occasionally, these fragments will pop up. They may pop up in seeing a picture, but as he described, he may also have sort of random thoughts and not know, is this really a memory or is it just a thought I'm having?
Chuck's problem, making a whole memory from fragments of his experiences, fits what Mika Ferfeli and other researchers believe to be the main job of the hippocampus. Not itself to store memories, but to link together the bits and pieces of an experience stored throughout the brain. sights, sounds, smells, even feelings, so that they can later be recalled as a coherent whole.
I am missing pieces of the puzzle. Completely incomplete. I overflow, unfinished, buzz hour by hour. There's never a way to say all I want to say. Words buzzing around me miss what should be. Words, that hive of an alphabet, stinging me from A to Z.
Let me give you a way to remember my name, okay? First of all,
So far, we've learned about the role of the hippocampus from people whose memory is dramatically impaired.
letters in the name.
To probe deeper, we're turning to someone with the memory of a champion.
Easy. Something fell, right? Okay. All right, add another L. Let's go to
Frank Felberbaum worked with us a few years ago, teaching a class how to put together a name and a face so we'd never forget them.
I got a falling bomb now. All right, now let's go to
Frank employs a method others in the memory business also use, making up highly visual stories that help glue together someone's name with a distinctive facial feature.
What feature would you choose on my face? Nose. My nose. I knew we'd say that. Okay. All right, so now that's an easy one.
We wanted actually to peer into Frank's brain while he's remembering names and faces and see his memory in action.
All over my face, right? You can imagine that happening.
How much time is he going to have in this test to remember names?
He's going to have only 2 seconds per face
2
name.
seconds?
Which is very short period of time.
But can you actually do your thing in 2 seconds?
I've never done it in that short period of time, so it's a brand new experience for me. My new
you
designer
look
outfit.
You look
That's
stunning.
right. That's right. I'm nude underneath.
Well, you don't have to tell me that. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and bring you into the magnet room and make sure that you're comfortable.
We brought Frank to a research scanner at the Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston.
He's got a very young-looking brain. It's beautiful. This view actually allows us to look at this folded over gray structure, my favorite part of the brain, which is called the hippocampus. And you can see that, in fact, he does have what I'll call plump hippocampi, evidence that these are nice, healthy hippocampi for someone who's 66 years old. That looks great.
Well, you got to tell him he has plump hippocampi when he comes out. He's going to really, I mean,
It'll be a
just
compliment?
love it. Yes, he'll love it. He won't even care what it means.
Well, in this case, bigger is better. This is a size that matters. So his hippocampi look great.
It's Frank's plump hippocampi we're going to be checking on as he lies in the scanner and sees projected onto a mirror over his head a series of faces paired with names. He presses a button if he thinks the name and face go together. But the main purpose of this is simply to make sure he's awake and concentrating, because the task involves a staggering 455 face name pairs, shown for only 2 seconds apiece. Meanwhile, the scanner is recording how hard his hippocampus is working.
When you remember this morning and you remember being here outside the scanner and all of us, your hippocampus is putting together all of that information. What it sounded like, what it looked like, who was talking, what you felt like, all of that gets formed in an associative or episodic memory. We're trying here to just tease that associative component out, of trying to say things that you haven't seen before, that face in the name, put them together. But that's just an example of what I think the hippocampus is always doing, which is putting together things into a cohesive memory.
So the hippocampus turns out to be like a super efficient file clerk, noting all the things that go into an experience as they're perceived in specialized regions of the brain, and forming a network of associations between them. The question now is, how well did Frank's hippocampus work?
You feel okay?
It's all right. Can you remove the bolts from my neck?
Yes.
After a half-hour rest, Frank is put back to work trying to remember which of 2 names actually went with the face he saw in the scanner. It's a long, arduous task. And for the first 100 or so faces, Frank seems to be cruising. But as the faces parade by, Frank's success rate declines. After all, he'd had no time to use his own expert method to match face and name, and in the end, he approaches the success rate of most of the subjects Risa has run in her study, about 75%.
So that's somewhat amazing that you can actually remember 3/4 of the face name pairs you saw, 455, seeing each one of them for less than 2 seconds. That's amazing to me the brain can do that.
Even more amazing is what Frank's hippocampus was doing when he was in the scanner. Because it lit up for face name pairs he would later remember correctly, but stayed dark for those he'd forget. In other words, Risa could, in theory, look at someone's brain while they're trying to memorize something and know whether they were going to succeed or not. It's now my turn to get my hippocampus scanned. This time while wearing goggles that project face name pairs directly into my eyes.
Aaron.
My task is a lot easier than Frank's.
Here we go.
I get a full 8 seconds instead of 2 to look at each face name pair. And Steve and Karen, it turns out, are going to become old friends, constantly cropping up among the new faces I'm seeing in the scanner. The idea behind this study is to find out if my hippocampus reacts differently when I'm trying to remember the new faces than it does when I'm confronted with dear old Steve and Karen again.
That is not good here. You did really well. That's great. You're a trooper.
How was that?
But first, the verdict on my brain. I've been scanned several times before for Frontiers, but you never know what's going to show up.
Right here is the hippocampus.
Yeah.
And you have no space around it. That's good. Very plump.
Yeah.
I'm quite impressed. Whatever you're doing in terms of keeping your brain young, you're doing a good job. It
Good.
looks great.
Keep going. This is Scott. It's not Sylvester.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe it is Sylvester. Wait a minute. Yeah, that's Sylvester.
That's Sylvester.
Yeah.
When it comes to recalling the names and faces, my plump hippocampi seem to have been working pretty well back there in the scanner.
Oh, Jill.
As it turns out, I get most of them right, though I had far more time and many fewer faces than did Frank.
Brigitte.
Excellent. And that is it. Woo! You're all done.
Good job.
But the most interesting result again came from the scans. This time, my hippocampus lit up for all the face name pairs, but as time went on, it increasingly failed to respond when Steve and Karen appeared. It's as if my hippocampus knew that I knew them, so it didn't bother to make the effort to remember.
This is raw data, so it's quite messy. But if you look at it closely, you can see that it started to go up during the first repeated face name pair. That's it right there. And you said, whoops, I've seen this before. And it falls back down saying, my hippocampus doesn't really need to pay attention to this. I've learned this already. And we see this pattern very frequently. Again, it's most pronounced in young folks, and you've got a very young-looking hippocampus response there.
Me too.
Yes. Absolutely.
So
that's interesting.
We've come to the campus of the University of California, Irvine, to meet with one of the giants of memory research, Jim McGaw. Jim has spent most of his long and distinguished career finding out why, among all the memories we form, some are vivid and indelible.
Let's take the extremes. Extremes are easy. I'm sure that all Nobel Prize winners know exactly where they were and what they were doing when they got the news that they won the Nobel Prize, and they'll never forget that. I'm equally sure that people who pick up body parts after an airplane crash will remember forever having seen that. And when this is described by them, they call it, it's etched in my mind. It'll be there forever. I'll never forget this. It's ingrained. It's welded into my brain. These are the kind of expressions that are used. So at the extreme, whether it's highly joyful or whether it is terribly disgusting and annoying.
Frightening?
Frightening, but it doesn't have to be frightening. It can be insulting. It can be insulting. I could say to you, which is not true, but I could say, you know, I've read some of your stuff. It's not as good as it used to be. You might give that some thought. Now, if you believed that I had said that, you'd remember that forever. I mean, and what did it do? Was that frightening to you?
No, as a matter of fact, every actor and probably every writer can remember every bad review he or she ever got.
Absolutely.
Word for word. I can tell you word for word my first bad review.
What makes these memories stick is their ability to arouse our emotions.
Gun.
In this experiment, a volunteer is watching slides while her emotional response to each one is measured.
You need this slide.
An injured boy.
But the kicker will come after the slideshow is over.
Can you name this slide?
Decomposing dog.
The experiment was designed by Jim McGaw's longtime collaborator, Larry Cahill.
What does she know about this experiment?
She thinks this experiment is about emotion. So she thinks she's come into an emotion lab where she's going to be shown a bunch of different slides of varying emotional content.
Snake.
And then immediately after she watches them, we're going to stick her arm in a tub of ice water. The reason we're going to do that is because this is a technique that's well known to activate the body's stress hormone response. And we believe that the body's stress hormone response acts to enhance memory. So by sticking her arm in ice water, immediately after she views these slides, we should be able to enhance her memory.
How long can people take this?
Many people, myself included, are wimps. They can take it for about a minute.
Yeah. You know, what's amazing to me is that you're doing this thing with the ice after she looks at the pictures. She doesn't have to have her arm in there and be getting that burst of hormones during the time she's looking at the pictures. It's afterwards.
Right now, she's just recently acquired all this new information, 20 slides. But her brain is busy storing that information. We call it consolidating, kind of like Jell-O setting. During the setting process, you have the opportunity to activate the body's stress hormone response. And the stress hormones work on the newly forming memory to enhance storage of it.
Go ahead and remove it. Very good, Melina. Just go ahead and put your arm here and rest it. I'm going to have a 3-minute rest period. Well, during this time I will continue taking measurements.
Melina endured the ice water for a full 3 minutes.
How did the ice water feel?
Horrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrible.
So you had an emotional response to it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
When subjects in the experiment are tested a week later for their memory of the slides, those who had the ice water treatment, like Melina, remembered the emotional slides better than control subjects. Somehow, the stress hormones had helped solidify the memories still forming in her brain.
Where does it take place in the brain? What do these stress hormones wash and activate?
Right. Well, we've done a lot of work in that regard, and in fact, there's one region in particular that has been identified as absolutely crucial to these effects. And it's a region called the amygdala. This person here would be facing towards you, and his or her amygdala is located about a half an inch in to an inch in either temporal lobes. It's about the size and shape of an almond, and amygdala happens to be Latin for almond.
Most of what we know about the amygdala comes from experiments with rats.
Okay, the animal's going to be put in the water for an opportunity to find a platform. It's never been in this water before, so it's going to swim around randomly. It'll be taken out after a while, and each time it's put back in, it's put back in at a different edge. Okay, so he ran into the platform, and it doesn't know that that's a platform.
From the rat's eye view, the platform is invisible. The only way this rat is going to find it is by bumping into it.
No, I'm not going to help you.
Most of the naive rats spend a lot of time swimming around the edges, looking in vain for a way out.
So he's going to get a little clue.
It's a big clue.
There is a platform here.
When he looks up like that,
Oh,
is he using smell or what, or wind?
Oh,
or
yeah,
what's
he's using everything, but he's sampling. He's sampling the environment.
Most rats learn to find the platform within a minute or so. But then some rats get an injection directly into the amygdala of a drug that switches it on, just as stress hormones do.
And now we're going to test for retention. Remember, it took them about 60 seconds on the very first trial.
Wow.
there. That's memory enhancement.
Wow.
So by directly stimulating its amygdala, the drug caused the rat to have the equivalent of a deeply emotional experience, firmly fixing the memory of how to find safety. It's no coincidence that the amygdala in both rats and humans is nestled right next to the hippocampus. And it's the hippocampus, of course, that sets up the networks of associations in the brain that constitute a memory.
The hippocampus is doing its job, and the amygdala comes in with a punch and says, this was important, do more of what you're doing. Consolidate that more strongly.
Yeah.
So learning can occur without the amygdala,
Yeah.
but it's not going to be very strong.
And you would remember everything equally.
You would remember everything equally, which is a very bad thing.
The death of your mother would be equal to where you put your car keys.
Absolutely.
Okay, and let's go.
But it turns out that not even all emotional events are necessarily remembered equally. It may depend on whether you're a man or a woman. Several years ago, Larry Cahill had subjects watch movies of emotionally arousing events.
What I'd like to do now is to lay you down on this bed and...
Immediately afterwards, their brains were scanned to see how their amygdalas responded. Recently, Larry reanalyzed the results of these experiments and discovered a puzzling pattern. In men, emotional events turn on only the right amygdala. In women, only the left amygdala is activated. Now, there's an old hypothesis that the right brain processes the gist of events, while the left focuses on the details. So,
let's say a man and a woman are having an argument. Did you pay that bill? I did pay that bill. You never pay bills. I do pay the bills. Well, whichever one is saying this about the other. The next day, if they say, let's go over what that was we had a problem with, is it possible that we might expect the two of them to have a different way of remembering either the gist of it or the details of it?
I would say it's entirely possible that while they were in the middle of that argument and the emotions were flowing, their two brains were not storing that information in exactly the same way. They weren't using the exact same parts of the brain, and they weren't storing exactly the same information.
So after an emotional fight, if they've both been emotional, she'll tend to remember the details and he'll tend to remember the gist of it.
This is cutting edge stuff. This is the kind of stuff that makes people say, really?
That's a good definition of cutting edge.
Yeah, right.
Are you sure about that?
But the cutting edge is the place I like to be.
A nice setting for lunch where the grad students...
We're still on the campus of the University of California, Irvine, where along with her students, Elizabeth Loftus has invited me to a picnic.
It's good. Well,
Oh, this looks very good.
yeah,
Well,
have a seat.
okay.
It's an appetizing spread, but among the choices, one leaps out at me immediately.
Deviled eggs. There are the deviled eggs.
Now, to understand why I'm so taken with those eggs, we have to go back a couple of
Can you
weeks.
pass a plate, Alan, please?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Oh, hate watermelon.
Elizabeth had sent me a long questionnaire about the foods I like or dislike.
Well, let's see.
Another questionnaire was about things that may or may not have happened to me as a child.
I ate 2 scoops of ice cream and 1 cone. That definitely did happen. Of course it happened. Sold chocolate bars for a fundraiser. Definitely did not happen. Ate freshly pickled vegetables. No. I'm, as you can imagine, fascinated to know what the questionnaire was really about. I mean, wasn't about food, was it?
Well, actually, we have a very sophisticated computer program that can take all of that information that you gave us about your childhood, about your, your likes, your dislikes, your habits, your personality. We have fed it into a computer.
Right.
And
you can tell my shoe size from that.
My obvious skepticism here stems from knowing that Elizabeth is an expert on false memories, things we think we remember, but that never really happened.
this is the profile from this very, very sophisticated computer program. And so I'd just like you to take a look at it, and then I'm going to ask you a few questions about it.
Let's see.
You disliked spinach as a young child. You enjoyed fried foods. You felt sick after eating hard-boiled eggs. Eating chocolate birthday cake made you happy. I can't remember any time when I ate chocolate birthday cake and actually got happy from it.
All right, well, let me just pick one of the other ones.
Okay.
You felt sick after eating hard-boiled eggs. Just
No.
when?
No, I can say with almost certain. You can't be certain about anything that happened that long ago, but I'm pretty sure that I never got sick after eating hard-boiled eggs. I can't remember a time when that might have happened.
Well, the thing about our childhood is that because it's so long ago, and because there is forgetting, and because there is childhood amnesia, and there are all kinds of things going on, we often don't remember things that are true of us. Right. I mean, you'd accept that, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you try to imagine what might have happened, it will tap into some of those forgotten experiences. So that's why I was asking you to try to think about when you might have eaten chocolate cake, or when you might have eaten too many hard-boiled eggs and not felt that great about it.
Yeah. Can't remember a time when I might have eaten hard-boiled eggs and gotten sick from it. Don't remember eating many hard-boiled eggs as a kid either. Water high. A few minutes later, I'm again filling out the questionnaire about my childhood experiences with food. Ate a hot dog with onions and sauerkraut. No. Ate a candy apple at a state fair. No. Got sick after eating too many hard-boiled eggs. No, but I can't be definitely sure. Say it too. Had a cheese pizza delivered. No. Tell me the truth. You don't even have a computer, do you?
We do. You saw some of our better computers in there, but we do.
I bet that's a trick. What do you suppose that is? Well, of course there's a trick. Elizabeth was trying to persuade me I remembered something that hadn't happened.
Oh, really? Okay, Alan.
Yeah.
Here was the study. A few weeks ago, we asked you about your childhood experiences and asked you if you ever felt ill eating hard-boiled eggs, and you said one definitely didn't happen.
Right.
Then we gave you feedback from a computer in which of course was bogus,
right.
And I know you maybe suspected that, but it was bogus. But in the middle of that feedback was from the very smart computer. We suggested that you as a child had gotten sick eating hard-boiled eggs. And later, when we asked you to fill out the sheet about your childhood again, you increased your confidence. You gave it a 2 this time instead of a 1, I believe. And so you did show an effect that we're showing in this study, that increased confidence that you had the experience that was suggested to you, but was completely made up by us. Now, the last step in this process is to see whether the manipulation has any further consequences down the road. I mean, will you avoid hard-boiled eggs?
I'm just not that interested in hard-boiled eggs.
Well, people make up all kinds of rationalizations for their behavior. I mean...
By claiming that a smart computer had insights into their childhood, Elizabeth Loftus has managed to persuade many of the subjects in her study to change their opinion about what foods they like or dislike. In other words, not only is it frighteningly easy to implant false memories in people, you can then get them to change what they think and maybe even how they behave based on those false memories.
It's more than potato chips that is at the heart of this somehow, right? I mean, a lot of your work has to do with false memories and court cases.
Right. Little tiny false memories, maybe, that we probably have all the time don't hurt people very much. But when it comes to people developing these very big false memories of being molested in satanic rituals or assaulted by people who didn't do anything to them, and we know that false memories of this sort have been generated, then it does people a lot of harm. Wrong people get prosecuted, innocent people get sued civilly, and so the false memory problem is a very big problem in society, and we're here really just trying to understand how it is that you can plant a seed of suggestion, and out of this a whole false memory can grow.
Well, I intend to nip one false memory in the bud right now. Give me that egg.
But I don't eat the yolks. That's good.
I see the youngest of the two boys because he's...
Lola Crosswhite is in the early stages of a disease that affects some 4 or 5 million Americans. And it's perhaps the one affliction we all fear most. The disease, which begins by robbing us of our ability to remember, is of course Alzheimer's.
When did you first start to notice that you had a problem with memory?
I'd go to the telephone would ring, and I'd go to take a phone call. And, I'm sure I was making all kinds of sense when I was talking because everything was very easy and that sort of thing. And I realized by the time I would hang the phone up, I hadn't a clue what had been said.
Didn't know what you'd been saying? Could you remember who you were talking to?
Sometimes and sometimes not.
In terms of someone in the early stage of Alzheimer's, what does that mean to them? What do they go through? What's their life like?
What they primarily have at the early stages is problem forming new memories. But everything that they ever were is still there. And that judgment, that human being is still there and is as precious and wonderful as they ever were. But the problem is short-term memory.
That was the sort of the first thing. And then it began to be that I would get very confused. I would start to do something, and then all of a sudden I kind of like would forget what I was going to do, and then the more I thought about it and the more I agonized about it, the more confused I'd get.
And with time, that is joined by other symptoms that include problems sometimes recognizing things, sometimes with speech, sometimes problems remembering how to manipulate objects. And by that point, we're into the middle stages of the disease, and that takes a few years. And then after that, there's more global decline in cognitive function when the disease really becomes severe.
Not funny.
Mark Trzynski has recently begun a dramatic experiment to try to arrest the damage done by Alzheimer's by injecting genetically engineered cells deep within the brain.
How do patients feel when you tell them you're going to stick a needle in their brain? Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah, well, if you were confronted with a disease for which we really don't have an effective therapy and which would ultimately rob you of the essence of our humanity, which is really our intellect, you'd probably be willing to take a needle.
I have two very nice little holes.
So then what did they do after they made the holes?
Well, then they go down with very long needles, and they'd have to take me to the MRI machine and be sure that they were exactly placed in the right place.
Earlier, cells taken from Lola's skin had been genetically engineered to pump out a growth factor vital to keeping the brain healthy. These skin cells were then injected through the needles to regions where Lola's brain cells were dying. The ultimate goal is to help these brain cells stay alive. But these are very early days, with the emphasis on proving the procedure is safe rather than that it works.
The one thing that was so wonderful, still is I always had this just really terrible feeling of confusion all the time. It was just, it was there and it just kind of like ground on me.
Yeah.
Gone.
So what, do you think that's a placebo effect, or might something be happening in there?
Alan, I don't know. It could be a real effect and it could be a placebo. I actually don't know. Hypothetically, what this growth factor would do to these cells could do that. It could focus attention, actually. That's one of the things it does in the animal studies. So it's intriguing to hear that kind of thing, but I don't know. At this stage, with not enough patients, you just have to say, it could be the effect and it could be a placebo.
Yeah.
No one has ever said that this is a promised land, It's just that first of all, it's a okay, I've lost the word.
Experiment.
Yeah, and it's an experiment. So I'm grateful because I know up to this point I've had some help. I don't know how much longer it will last, but whatever it is, it's given me some better time than I would have had.
Yeah.
So, that's good.
The fact that Lola's hopes rest on a risky experiment highlights her lack of options. Today, there are no proven effective treatments for Alzheimer's, in part because by the time it's diagnosed, the brain is already badly damaged. In these images compiled from scans of living patients, a wave of destruction moves inexorably through the brain, turning it from healthy blue to dying white. First to go is the hippocampus, and so the ability to form memories, followed by the areas involved in emotion and reasoning. Spared even to the end are basic functions like sight, hearing, and touch.
Okay, watch your step.
One of the real breakthroughs in Alzheimer's research is coming from new technologies to detect the disease much earlier. Here at UCLA, for instance, a technique called positron emission tomography, or PET, is being employed to pick up subtle changes in how well cells in the brain are firing. In a healthy brain, cells firing normally show up color-coded red. In an Alzheimer's brain, the blue regions are where cells are failing to fire, notably in the memory centers around the hippocampus.
These scans are so sensitive that in many situations we can diagnose Alzheimer's disease sometimes years before the doctor can arrive at that diagnosis in a clinical setting.
That's really fascinating. You can look into a person's head and tell that they're getting Alzheimer's before the symptoms show up? I mean, before the family might be troubled by it?
It makes sense, because if you think about it, the brain is a very adaptable organ in the body, and we've done other studies where we find that people with very subtle problems, so they sort of compensate for this deficit that is there that we otherwise can't see. So the pencil and paper test won't show us anything, but the scans will. And when we do these scans, we can see that those cells are not firing as well as they should.
A scan that detects Alzheimer's even before symptoms appear means treatment could begin much earlier, before the brain is ravaged beyond repair. But that, of course, depends on there being effective treatments. And today there is a growing sense of optimism among Alzheimer's researchers that such treatments are at least on the horizon.
When someone has Alzheimer's, what's happening inside their brain?
They're building up tiny amounts of these nasty molecules that shouldn't be there, that aren't there really early in life, and that over time, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, start to build up. And the molecule is okay when it's just in singlets, if it's just a single unit of this at a place. When it doubles up and gets into bad company, so to speak, it gangs up into doublets or triplets or quadruplets, that's when it causes trouble. And we think that that's the cause of the disease.
The molecule is called what?
Amyloid beta.
If Dennis Selko is right, and it's these killer molecular gangs that destroy brain cells, then there are two ways of tackling the problem. Prevent the amyloid beta buildup in the first place, perhaps with a drug, or get rid of the amyloid beta before it can reach dangerous levels. This second approach has been dramatically successful, but so far only in mice. These mice have a version of human Alzheimer's disease, and when mice like them were injected with an antibody that removes amyloid beta, they showed every sign of being cured.
It's like a miracle, basically. There was this one study in a group at Lilly, Eli Lilly Company in Washington University, where they tested the mice on whether they could recognize objects, and they couldn't. These were Alzheimer engineered mice. And they gave them one shot of the antibody and tested them again the next morning. And lo and behold, these mice could now distinguish two objects that they couldn't before. They returned the mice from their 23-month-old status, which is old for a mouse, down to the level of a 5-month-old mouse, which is young. So, you know, we can only hope that such a thing could happen in humans, maybe get close to that.
But when 2 years ago a vaccine against amyloid beta was tried in humans, the trial had to be stopped when one of the patients died from inflammation of the brain. Meanwhile, Dennis Selko, working in collaboration with his old friend Howard Weiner, had come up with the idea of giving the amyloid beta vaccine not as an injection, but as nose drops.
They sniff it. It's like a nasal spray, but it's inhaled.
The vaccine works, clearing amyloid beta from the mouse brains. And because there are theoretical reasons to suppose that a nasal or oral vaccine won't cause dangerous brain inflammation, the Harvard team is now hoping to soon begin human trials in a small number of Alzheimer's patients.
You're talking about vaccines today that help eliminate a disease once you've got it.
Right.
Are you hoping to have a vaccine eventually that will help you not get Alzheimer's in the first place?
Conceptually, the answer is yes, because we believe that it's very possible that everybody is accumulating to a small degree or to a larger degree these abnormal proteins. And by giving a vaccine, we'll continually be clearing them out. So that if we're lucky, and if the theory holds up, there might be a day that everybody who's a certain age will be getting a vaccine to prevent Alzheimer's.
The idea that a simple sniff or swallow may one day protect us from Alzheimer's is extraordinary and clearly years in the future.
And they both live nearby. They don't live with me.
But even today, there are preventive measures we can take, if not to avoid the disease, at least to slow its corrosive effects on our brains.
I personally think that the more you do and the more you keep on with your life, like I still ski, going on a photo shoot in Africa, but I do believe that if you sort of set some goals for yourself and keeping going and doing things, I think that helps a whole lot.
Good morning, everybody. How you doing?
Good morning.
So we're going to talk about healthy brain aging today. I'm going to put this program into context. We're going to talk about
UCLA's Gary Small has started several community-based projects in Los Angeles intended to help keep the brains of the baby boomer generation in fighting trim, even though they're now getting to the age when the first subtle signs of memory loss are beginning to nag.
Memory training techniques. In fact, by the time I get done with you today, your memory will be improved almost immediately, getting in some of those good fats in your diet.
In these programs, Small emphasizes the value to the brain of a healthy diet, stress reduction, and physical exercise.
Nutritional scientists can actually measure.
But he also teaches mental gymnastics, exercises for the brain to sharpen memory, including putting names to faces.
My name is Cindy.
I'm Alan.
My name is Eleanor.
Jack.
I'm Sherry. I'm Joyce.
Ken.
Laurel. Norma. Nancy.
Visual information, for most people, is much easier to remember. So what I recommend is you look, actively observe, create a mental snapshot, you snap, and then the last component is connect, which means you connect up those mental snapshots.
Gary's method, emphasizing linking elaborate visual stories with what you want to remember, is very similar to what we saw Frank Felberbaum do earlier. Here, for example, we're asked to memorize a list of unrelated items.
I made up a story. Teddy Bear was driving down the road in a truck full of acorns to the bank smoking a cigar when he ran over a plank, kettle, and raccoon, and they had the funeral, which wasn't one of the words, at the stadium with roses, and at the end, a volcano erupted.
Fantastic. Good for you. Way to go. That's the fourth time today I've heard that same story.
While there are good reasons to suppose that programs like this will help our brains age gracefully, Gary Small hopes to clinch the case. He plans to scan the brains of some of those who actively practice the program and compare them to the brains of a control group, and so demonstrate that how we live can perhaps change our brains for the better. Meanwhile, I'm anxious to demonstrate that the lessons of the last hour haven't yet been lost on me.
So I want you to go home, practice your techniques, and when we meet next time, we're going to see if we can remember everybody's name. We're going to work on that next time, okay? Thank you very much for helping us out today.
You mean I sat here remembering everybody's name for nothing? I can name them backwards, forwards, and I did that for nothing? I won't be here next time.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Nancy, Norma, Laurel, Ken, Joyce, Jerry, Jack, Eleanor, and Cindy.
And Ellen.
Who?
Come visit us online. Scientific American Frontiers can be found on the World Wide Web at the address on your screen.
Join me next time as we take a spin through some of the technologies that will change what you drive, and maybe even how you drive it, on Future Car.